So now let's continue with Hongming Li and speaking about the Eurofleets Plus data management.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So today I will talk about the Eurofleets project data management that we set up to manage all the data collected during this project that were collected by a scientific crew that were on board of funded cruises by the project. So what is Eurofleets? Eurofleets Plus, it's a project funded by Horizon 2020. It has started in 2019 and then it did more than 4 years after because of the COVID crisis. So the project facilitated open free of charge access to a unique fleet of research vessels from European and international partners, which has been arranged by 2 competitive transnational access calls. So a total of 28 cruises were funded where scientists could go on board of these ships and collect the data to conduct their research. So for the second half of the project, these data have been collected and have been managed according a common harmonized framework that applies fair and open research data principles. So for that, a dedicated work package task has been set up with the clear objective to optimize the management of scientific data generated during the cruises. It has been deployed as an integrated and uniform data management approach for all the 28 cruises, and it has been implemented in synergy with SeaDataNet network, a leading pan-European infrastructures, for the marine data management, involving 3 NODCs as core partners, so Airbins, OGS, and H2020. So together, we implemented a centralized and coordinated data management in collaboration with the scientists. So here you can see the complete data handling chain of the project. So I won't go into detail, but the data collecting during the cruises on board of the research vessels were gathered by the PIs and then deposited via EMODNet data ingestion portal to the assigned reference data centers, which would elaborate further the data to be published in SeaDataNet catalogs such as the CDI, SeaDataNet CDI service and the CSR service. And then they would be referred in the Evior portal developed during this Eurofleets Plus project. So in practice, how does it go? So when the PIs were funded for these crews, they agreed to follow a clear data management process that we defined, as you can see with a timeline here. So 2 weeks before the cruise, they needed to submit a full DMP where they would define the data types and the amount of data they would collect, but also if they would apply for an embargo period, and they would also define the data usage license they would apply on their data sets. The NODC would review and ask for updates of the DMP if it's not detailed enough. And then during the cruise, the data are collected. 2 weeks after the cruise summary report needs to be submitted to the SeaDataNet CSR catalog. And then 2 months after the cruise, or as soon as the data are available after the lab work, the data need to be deposited to their assigned data center or directly to EMODNet data ingestion portal for further elaboration and generation of CDIs. So here is the data flow for the common data without embargo. So as you see, the scientist, the PI can directly submit the data to EMODNet DIP. Then the data would be harmonized to be published on the CDI, CDataNet service. And for scientists who want some DOI to publish the data, we invited them to publish the dataset to CDataNet Sinoe to have this DOI. And this is also the data flow that we recommended for exotic data that could not feed CDataNet CDI service. To monitor the progress of the data management of the project, we define fairness indicators based on the repository on which the data set would end up. So we achieved fair, findable, and accessible by publishing the data to EMONET DIP and to Sinoe. And we could achieve fairness of the data when the data would reach CDataNet via the CDI service. So we did that for the 28 cruises in parallel until the end of the project. And at the end of the project, we ended up with all the DMPs completed except one. They were reviewed and updated when necessary. All the cruise summary reports were published on the CSR catalog and then linked to the Evier portal. And for the data, the scientists generated during all these cruises 164 data sets that covered a large variety of discipline purpose, as you can see on the pie charts, and also covering several sea and oceans regions as well. So over these 164 data sets, we managed to preserve 66% of them, so the PIs could send us these data. 10% of them were still under analysis in lab at the end of the project, and for the rest, the PI didn't reply to or remind us to send in their data. So we ended up with more than 20% of the data published on EMONET data ingestion portal, more than 30 on the CDataNet CDI service, and 15% on CDataNet Sinoe, which corresponds to the number of applications on the plot below. For the fairness indicators that we defined to monitor the progress, at the end of the project, we reached 43% of findability and 27% of open accessible data, which will be increasing at the end of the embargo. And 30% of the data sets could be interoperable, with 13 only reusable now, but at the end of the embargo, it will increase the rate to 30 as well. So in conclusions, there were many data sets generated with a diversity of data types that needed different expertise to handle it, but the NODC could, for 30% of them, make the data fair. And given the scale of the project, the amount of generated data and the time scale involved, we were very happy with this score because achieving 100% would actually not be possible with the time we had and the resources allocated to the data management of the project. So to achieve that, we had to well describe the guidelines, giving a lot of training to the scientists and support them for their data management plan, but also to communicate with them a lot to get the necessary metadata and data information to get the data more close to fairness. The biggest part of the work was to make the data curation process that enabled the data to be interoperable and reusable. So the main lessons learned from this experience is that the complete data handling chain is a long process which inevitably extended beyond the project, and that achieving fairness at a high rate is something which is quite difficult to achieve. That's why we are quite happy with the 30% of fairness. And also a key important thing that contribute to the success of this data management process is that a close cooperation was needed and was conducted by the NODCs to support the PI and to bring them more aware about the data management best practice and what is needed for the data to be fair. So I hope that these lessons learned will serve for other projects like current and future projects of the EU, but also for the project Aquarius, which is a follow-up project of Eurofleets, which also will give access to research infrastructure in Europe to marine and freshwater scientists for research infrastructure and cruise hours. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there any question? You're perfectly in time.
Thank you very much for an interesting talk. Do you think if there was more funding available after the end of the project, your 66% would have been higher? And generally, would it have been a better outcome?
I think so, yes. So as we had only a limited amount of person months paid on the data management, we did the best we could. But the scientists commit themselves to provide data even beyond the project. So on a volunteer base, we can bring them to more fairness, but of course this is not the priority of our task now. But of course with more resources, I think we can reach a better percentage.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and it's a problem that we've encountered for years, that the data often arrive at the data centre after the project, and we've spent a lot of effort trying to persuade the funding bodies that they should give an extra 6 months or a year to the data centre to do the job properly, but they're not interested.
Yeah, I think they recognize more and more the need to have data management support for the data to be sustainably preserved. And since there was the COVID crisis, the project has been extended for the data management part already for 6 months, so we could extend our work, but obviously it was not enough to handle all the data generated.
Oh, it's good that it was extended for some time. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think there were also two things. We had the COVID, so it meant that a lot of the cruises were going out deployed much later than originally planned. Because originally planned it was cruises and then do follow-up. But now the lead time, let's say, it became smaller and smaller. And secondly, we had a lot of data which were samples, which have to go to laboratory processes, and they were not immediately available. So it was also, let's say, delayed time, because for the scientists even waiting for lab time to be able to process the samples. And that let's say, together gives you, let's say, you go over the end of the project. At the same time, of course, we hope that a couple of those scientists still will follow up later, that they come back and say, I want my data to be part of Iona and Copernicus. So here's my data, but that's on a goodwill basis, I would say. We have now in Aquarius, let's say, we are doing the same process, but there initially we planned it, let's say, that we really have the deployment of the activities, the TA, transnational access, and that we then really have a lead time to follow up. Of course, then later we want to use their own data, and together with the scientists also for virtual access and virtual research. And then the data must be available, because then they can combine their own data together with, let's say, other established data sets. And there if you look at the planning, let's say, if everything falls together as it should be, let's say, then we should be able to get a higher score. But there are no guarantees, you know. A scientist is a scientist, and a PI is a PI, so.
Yeah, but I think that the training of the scientists are really a key component to reach that. They need to be trained about data management practice and expectations.
Another question?
Yeah.
I have kind of the opposite problem of not having the data available, because I think that one of our ships has been one of the cruises that Eurofleet had, GeoSAS. And we publish the data on a daily basis. So we have sent the data to Copernicus every day, the CTD casts, and probably the thermoseismograph data. And we probably also published the data in our databases, and then you publish the data in Eurofleets, so there is at least 3 versions of the same data. So how should we solve that in Aquarius?
You're part of Aquarius, so we can discuss that.
No, well,